Hello and welcome everyone to the 2022 Stories Challenge launch party. My name is Jill Tidman and I'm the Executive Director of the Redford Center, and I'm very excited to be marking this special moment with you all. I would like to begin our time together by taking a moment to respectfully acknowledge and honor the people who came before us, who are with us, and the future generations to come wherever we are. In my case, I live and work on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As a reminder, the process of colonization is ongoing and still adversely affects Indigenous people in many communities, including the San Francisco Bay Area. Because we are all in different parts of the country, please feel free to acknowledge the Indigenous people of the lands you are on today. We do this to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of Indigenous communities everywhere, to affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples, and to take responsibility for improving relations between nations. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and to consider how we are and how we can each try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. At the Redford Center, we use the power of storytelling to galvanize environmental justice and safeguard planetary health. And in particular, we are excited to support youth voices and a new generation of leaders and storytellers. Through our Redford Center Stories program, we provide an opportunity to showcase the unique insight and ideas that young people have to share with the world. Redford Center Stories includes opportunities to experience how environmental film projects can create real-world change. It invites young people all over the world to join a growing community of storytellers and to make their own 90-second film about environmental justice. This is part of our annual Storytelling Challenge. And today's event marks the opening of the submission period for the 2022 Redford Center Stories Challenge. During the program today, you're going to hear from some very special guests, including last year's challenge grand prize winner, Shannon Germain. I hope you leave this launch party inspired to tell your story, share your ideas, and participate in the Stories Challenge. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our education specialist, Will Freund, who will provide a more detailed overview of the Stories Challenge and talk about the support we offer for educators and youth who are interested in participating.
Hi everybody, my name is Will Freund. I work on the Stories team here at the Redford Center. If this is your first exposure to the Redford Center Stories program and challenge, it is a free environmental justice education program and curriculum for youth 5th through 12th grade. This program celebrates transformational storytelling, education, community well-being, and global justice. This program is a go-to resource for educators, after-school programs, youth development organizations, and homeschooling parents interested in supporting their students and learning more about the environment. I'm here today to give you a quick overview of the Redford Center Stories Challenge. For this year's challenge, we have 3 different prompts from students to choose from to create their 90-second films. Prompt number 1, the future I envision is. What do you envision for the future of our world and of our environment? A vision statement is a powerful thing to imagine and share with others so that communities can come together who share similar goals and missions. Prompt number 2, I'm an environmentalist because. This is your opportunity to stake your claim as an environmentalist. What are you fighting for? How are you investing in environmental justice, protection, or regeneration? What are you doing to meet the moment? You might share a story you're moved to tell from your own community that reflects what environmentalism and climate justice looks or feels like to you. Prompt number 3, a call to action. Create a public service announcement or PSA that creates awareness about or shows the importance and impact of a problem facing the environment or the communities most impacted by the climate emergency. What do you want your audience to feel and to know? What behavioral change do you hope will make, and how can you help ensure this change? Submissions for the Redford Center Stories Challenge open today and run through March 21st. We are so excited to see all the amazing films you all are going to produce. For all of our amazing educators out there, we want to share some of the ways that the Redford Center can support you. In addition to the student film prizes, we will also be awarding an educator prize for an outstanding educator in the Redford Center Stories program. Every week throughout the length of the Redford Center Stories program, we host free, open, online office hours. This is your opportunity to pop in, ask questions, and get feedback on all things stories. In addition to the office hours, we are creating resources for our educators to help support their students through the filmmaking process. If you want more information regarding our office hours or our resources, check your email or reach out to us at stories@redfordcenter.org. If you cannot make it to office hours or prefer a one-on-one conversation, please also feel free to reach out to us, as we want to support our educators as best we can. Up next, we're going to be hearing from multimedia content creator and Rethink Outside fellow, Brandon Hill. He will be talking to you about the importance of telling your story. Take it away, Brandon.
You know, I'm often asked the question about why does environmental storytelling matter? And it matters for a number of reasons. Mainly, it's on us to create a new story, new narrative when it comes to telling stories about our environment. I mean, as we look around, you know, you guys are at an interesting age. You're kind of coming into your young pre-adolescent stage, and you're probably asking a lot of questions about what's going to happen to the future, your future, in regards to the environment. Will you have an environment? What will your planet look like? And a lot of that question is going to be answered by not just people who are in their 40s right now, but in your generation. And what has to happen and what has been happening is that the story around environmentalism and conservation has been changing over the past 20, 30, 40 years. It's become a lot more obvious that we have to do things in a different way. The things that we have done in the past have not worked, and there's a sense of urgency that is finally being understood. And so we have to use our stories to begin to compel people, governments, to change policy that are going to benefit all of us on this planet. When you talk to people about environmentalism, you talk to people about conservation, you talk to people about the planet, there's a growing sense from a lot of people that it's just too big of a problem. They say, well, what can I do? Why does it matter what I do? I'm just one person. But this planet is made of many people. And if we all think in an individualistic manner, we'll never get anything accomplished. Your story, your ability to tell your story and your perspective helps to unify and unite people, to let them know that their individual actions work towards a collective good. How do I get started? Well, for one, you get started by just thinking about it, by making actions. You have an idea in your head, brainstorm how to get it out. Connect with people around you. Do some research. Use YouTube, Google, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok to find people who are able to answer questions that you may have to get started. Don't overthink the process of getting started. Sometimes it's better to jump in and get messy. You'll figure it out. What kind of equipment do you need? Once again, most people have something as simple as their phone. Start there. You have all information at your literal fingertips. Use it. Google everything. There's no information knowledge that's too far from you. Once you have a good base of research, of knowledge, of understanding of the subject matter, then you'll find people that'll be able to help tell the story that you want to tell. Telling stories is one of the most powerful tools that people have to influence, to teach and inspire. Stories unite the people. Stories bring people together. Stories motivate individuals. Stories motivate communities. Stories motivate countries. When you tell your story, you'll never know who's watching, who's listening, and who's going to be impacted by what you've done. They'll never worry about if you're the one that's supposed to do it. You are. Don't think about, well, somebody else is going to do it. They're not. Your stories, your actions, your work are pivotal for the survival of our planet. And because of that, I want you to take your young minds and work together and to create narratives that say we can save our planet. Thank you.
Our next guest is Shannon Germain, who was last year's Stories Grand Prize winner. She's here to share some of her advice for young filmmakers and share her most recent work.
I think it's because people react more to stories than to things like statistics or facts. I could rattle off some numbers about how species are dying off, or how there's more CO2 in the air, or millions of tons of plastic in the ocean, but I think people just tune that out. But if you tell them a story, like a story of a family who's struggling to survive as sea levels rise on the island where they live, or about a mother polar bear who can't feed her cub, or a child who has lung problems because of air pollution, I think people respond better when they are using their heart rather than their head, when emotion is involved. And I think that makes them more likely to want to help. Just do it and don't think that you need anything special. You just need some kind of camera. All of my films are actually done with my phone. I'm still saving for my first DSLR. And I think a lot of kids think that you need a class or a teacher who's really good at filmmaking, or that you need to go to a special film school, but you don't. I've actually taught myself everything simply by reading things and watching YouTube videos about editing. So there's really nothing holding you back. And plus, with all the information and resources that you can get from the Redford Center about filmmaking, it's a huge help. But there is so much information online. You just have to make sure you're getting it from credible sources, because there's a lot of fake stuff out there. And be sure that when you keep track of where you get your information from, because if you forget to mark it down, then it's really hard to find it again, and you need to cite it just like in a research paper. Well, I really wanted to do a film about climate change, but there are so many different angles to it, and it's just such a huge, complex problem. So I started researching what laws we're currently using to battle it. And when I found out that the law we're using is over 50 years old, I knew I had found my topic. Code Red, the Clean Air Act's battle against climate change, is about how our government is using this law that's over 50 years old to try and tackle the huge crisis of climate change. And in some ways, the Clean Air Act is great, but we need to strengthen it and also create additional laws to tackle this problem.
Folks, we got to listen to the scientists and the economists and the national security experts. They all tell us this is code red. The nation and the world are in peril.
This is going to be our new normal, and the effects that we're seeing from climate change are the crisis of our generation.
In my community and throughout the world, we are already seeing the effects of climate change.
Climate change is not just a threat for the future, but it's actually a real problem in the now.
Scientists and forecasters who study the connection between climate change and extreme weather say the rapid rates of sea level rise are accelerating the frequency and intensity of severe weather events.
It's a threat to humanity, that it's a threat to the United States, which will become worse and worse.
We're seeing people drown in their basements in Queens, New York because of flooding and rain. They're seeing that more territory burned down in the United States just since the first of the year than it makes up the entire landmass of the state of New Jersey. They've seen hurricane with top winds of 178 miles an hour. I mean, all of a sudden, people are seeing these things happening they never thought would happen.
And the federal government is taking measures to protect us from this crisis. But its primary weapon in this battle is over 50 years old, a law that was written long before climate change was even making headlines. The Clean Air Act of 1970 provides the basis for the vast majority of federal efforts to reduce the impact of climate change.
The Clean Air Act was first introduced in 1970, back when the kind of this notion of climate change was very much still on the fringes.
The Clean Air Act, in my opinion, is one of our nation's most successful laws. It's actually saved millions of lives since it was enacted. And the reason is that breathing dirty air is actually really bad for our health. Every year, something around 350,000 people die from exposure to particulate matter pollution. So it's kind of like a COVID pandemic happening every single year just because of our use of fossil fuels.
One of the reasons the Clean Air Act has been successful in fighting climate change is because of its flexibility, giving power to the Environmental Protection Agency to review and update air quality standards based on current conditions.
And the idea was that, of course, as time goes on, new air pollutants might arise, and the EPA needed to be able to address new things that Congress hadn't envisioned.
In 2007, the Supreme Court put this flexibility to the test.
In April, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in favor of plaintiffs' argument that EPA is authorized to regulate automotive greenhouse gas emissions under Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
This is an opinion that could have some pretty significant and far-reaching impacts.
But the flexibility of the Clean Air Act also makes it vulnerable.
Any law needs enforcement and implementation by the executive branch. And what we had with the Trump administration is an administration that really was more interested in coddling the polluters.
I feel that the United States has tremendous wealth. I've made that wealth come alive. And I'm not going to lose that wealth. I'm not going to lose it on dreams, on windmills.
Science denialism and climate denialism was something that was just too prevalent in the movement. And because they didn't like the policies of the left, they decided that the problem of climate change was fake as well. And that's not how science works.
That sort of interference in science has really been harming people across the country.
Since coming into office 1 year ago, the Biden administration has been undoing more than 100 Trump-era regulations that favored fossil fuel industries and weakened essential environmental protections, including the Clean Air Act. So what happens here depends on who's in here and who's in here.
There was a time when these environmental issues and clean air and clean water were not considered partisan issues. And that time was 30, 40 years ago when we passed a lot of our landmark environmental regulations and laws in this country.
Back in 1970, you did have a lot of support among Republican elected officials for cleaning up the environment, and they showed great leadership.
Every year that we delay action, we continue to emit more greenhouse gases, and that pushes us closer and closer to higher temperatures, more climate chaos, all of those bad things.
I think there's been skepticism from people more on the conservative side of things or the Republican side of things, thinking that people on the left are just using climate change as an excuse to introduce all these other kinds of policies and agendas that would impact the economy and American society and all those kinds of things. So I think that's one problem, that there's been kind of this shift on the Democratic side towards tackling climate change, using everything rather than specifically looking at the issue of reducing emissions.
But the Clean Air Act is not a strong enough weapon in this fight.
But by itself, it's not going to be enough, probably. And we do need Congress to take further steps to make sure that we're able to fully meet the climate challenge.
We need to vigorously enforce the Clean Air Act and ultimately to strengthen it.
The Clean Air Act was last updated in 1990. For it to be an effective weapon, we needed to be strengthened to stand up to the changing climate and the constantly changing political climate of Washington, D.C.
Because there's been too many years since there's been a clean air bill, and this notion that the president wants this bill so badly, I'm not so sure the president wants this bill so badly. I want it badly. I'm not so sure the president wants it badly.
The time is now to update this vital law.
This is the United States of America. There's not a darn thing we can't do. Thank you.
We're excited to announce the judges for this year's Stories Challenge. Our judges include actor, activist, and co-founder of the Redford Center, Robert Redford, multimedia artist Zibile Shagars Redford, YouTube personality and host of Animal Planet's Brave the Wild, Coyote Peterson, founder of Latino Outdoors and co-founder of #CAParksNow, Jose Gonzalez, environmental media host, activist, and the digital media strategist behind Brown Girl Green, Christy Drutman, Interim Director of Far Star Action Fund, Ali Fujino. And finally, we are pleased to announce that last year's grand prize winner of the Stories Challenge, Shannon Germain, will serve as our first annual student judge. For an updated list of 2022 Stories Challenge judges, please see our website at www.redfordcenter.org/stories. This year, we'll be awarding prizes to a total of 7 films and 1 outstanding educator. For each awardee, the Redford Center pledges to donate 50 trees per person through 1 Tree Planted. Additionally, we'll donate $250 to an environmental justice organization of their choice. We'll also award a first prize award to 1 film made by a student in 5th through 8th grade, and a first prize award to 1 film made by a student in 9th through 12th grade. Each of these awardees will receive a donation of 75 trees planted and a donation of $350 to an environmental justice organization of their choice. Finally, the grand prize winner of the Stories Challenge will receive a donation of 100 trees planted and a $500 donation to an environmental justice organization of their choice. Through our collaboration with Nautilus magazine, we will also be awarding 1 film the Nautilus Prize for Science and Nature. This awardee will receive a complimentary digital and print subscription to Nautilus magazine for themselves and their school. Finally, this year we would like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our participating educators by awarding a new prize called the Environmental Educator Award to an outstanding stories educator. This educator will receive a donation of 100 trees through 1 Tree Planted and a $500 gift. And speaking of our outstanding educators, we'd like to now share a conversation between educator Suzanne Giacotto and our education specialist, Will Freund, talking about how educators can support students through the Stories Challenge.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Giacotto, and I live and work in Chicago. I'm a middle school and primary French teacher at GEMS World Academy in Lakeshore East.
How have you integrated the Redford Center Stories program into your classroom?
So last year was my first year of incorporating the Redford Stories into my 8th grade environmental unit, which is one of our IB units of inquiry. But I went into the website and I saw that it was Robert Redford, and I was so excited to dive in and learn more about what you were doing and unveil this amazing curriculum of resources and ideas and ways to involve my students in creating films through their voice of environmental justice.
As a non-science teacher, why were you drawn to the Redford Stories program?
Such a great question. So in the IB, storytelling is the communication part of what I do as a world language teacher, but being able to articulate their research, their connections with the planet and sustainable living is one of the units of inquiry that we explore. The unit in French is called L'environnement. Suis-je responsable pour mon environnement? So am I responsible for my environment? And all of our units of inquiry kind of circle those not unanswerable questions, but open-ended questions. And so bringing the curriculum and the mini lessons and the opportunities that the Redford Center offers into a world language classroom is a perfect fit, because it gives us an avenue to embellish vocabulary in an important way, right? In a way that's connected to a very important topic of taking care of our home, the planet, and just, be able to communicate important advocacy pieces connected to the topic of protecting the planet.
Can you talk about how you go about choosing some of the programs, or maybe some of the challenges that you chose to use for your class?
Sure. So just Friday, in fact, my 8th graders were experimenting with apple clips using your nature scavenger hunt, and the excitement of discovering a new app and a new tool. And, they know how to use iMovie, some of them, use some more elevated filmmaking tools, but being able to do this in the moment. And it's winter in Chicago right now, so it was hard for them to find something green in that classroom anyway. And so they were, hanging out by the window ledge, looking for evergreens, and then playing with different tools and imagining how their topic, which they took a while to develop their own topic for their film for the contest, could look with the time-lapse tool and all the different features that Apple Clips has that they weren't thinking about using initially. So I think giving kids room, space to play with the ideas that you've shared with us is really important. Sometimes, as educators, we think we're on this time crunch just to accomplish, five particular goals by the end of the week. Giving them the space to play and create allows them to expand their idea of how they want to tell their story, how they want to convey their message.
Teachers are some of the best ways to help students learn how to tell their own story. So kind of bringing it back to our educators is, why is storytelling important to you?
So the ability for a student to be able to articulate a story shows deep learning in really important ways. In terms of storytelling through filmmaking, adding imagery, music, and ideas in an organized way that encompasses an important message that they want to share, whether it's environmental advocacy or environmental justice, there are things that they'll take with them through their lifetime. And so, and for French, if they're practicing it well enough to be able to say it in a film, that means they've learned it. And so for world language, that's the goal, that they can articulate and communicate important information that is, inside of them, and they're able to share it with other people. So I think storytelling and filmmaking is one of the best methods to show what they've learned, show off what they've learned.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you and the young people in your life feel inspired and activated to tell your story as part of this year's Stories Challenge. We can't wait to see what you all accomplish. Please visit our website, redfordcenter.org/stories, for more information on how to enter the Stories Challenge. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us at stories@redfordcenter.org. Have a restful evening.